Chloe, many thanks. Good afternoon to you all. How lovely to have you join myself, Nicole, Chloe, for this afternoon's virtual tour. As Chloe indicated, this is the fourth in the annual installment. We started in winter, we've moved through to autumn today. And what you see in front of you right now is a map of Cruickshank Botanic Garden. My guess, my hope, is that many of you have been able to enjoy this property in years past, maybe much more recently, weeks or months past. It is now 123 years old, founded in 1898. Cruickshank Botanic Garden gets its name after the original individual, the very forward-thinking, very generous Anne Cruickshank in 1898, who gave the original Cruickshank building without its wings, the granite building, and as per the map there, the house in the far southwest corner saying private house, gave that plus 7 acres of land to the university to create a botanic garden. Over the decades, predominantly into the 1960s, the university bought additional land and extended those 7 acres to what it is today, 11 acres, 4.5 hectares. And this map is one that I had created by Uniprint when I first arrived. Amazing to think that was now 9 years ago. And while there's no scale on this map, that is deliberate. There is a key, and you'll see the yellow dots indicating the numbered yellow dots indicating the various locations of the garden. We're not going to explore everything visually today, far from it. That's for you to come and hopefully enjoy in your own time at some point, or indeed to refer back to the previous tours over this year, all available on the YouTube site. Regardless, today is very much an autumnal tour. I took the images yesterday. We had some stunning sunshine filter through. Today it's much more overcast, and I make no apologies for focusing on the autumn colour that's beginning to look very fine in the gardens. Admittedly, some strong gusts of the last few days have blown many of the leaves to the ground, but you'll still get a fine impression, I think, of what's presently on offer. So with that in mind, let us start away, and I look forward to highlighting elements of Cruickshank Botanic Garden for you, and indeed being able to answer your questions at the end. You're in the eastern corner as per this frame right here. This is the Cruickshank building and courtyard, a frequent location where I meet staff, students and other colleagues, often a location to start tours as well, how appropriate for today. And you'll see more leaves on the deck throughout today's tour. You'll also see that there was some good gusts yesterday as this video moves around. So that was the courtyard, that was the Cruickshank building, and we're moving along the main paved path here. It takes us to the garden nursery. It also peels off in a westerly direction to the zoology building on the western flank of the botanic property. A couple of colleagues there, they are some of the portering team taking goods by hand across to zoology. And so we begin in a moment to swing to our left, and that immediately takes us up a pathway that didn't exist when I first arrived. That was put in by my team, opens it up to the pond. This is a brand new area, brand new in the sense that it's been opened up very recently, and you can see some new plantings that have gone in there, absolutely delightful. The 4 stems you see there are holly. They will all break. What I mean by that is from the cuts and directly below the cuts, the plant will send out new growth, and we'll be able to shape that in the years to come. More importantly, it lets in dramatic light levels now to the understory we have there, the ground cover. A lot of that ground cover is dead nettle lamium, but variegated lamium, and we've planted through that with various different species, including dogwood. You can see that dotted through. It will be a charming space with these additional light levels. Directly to the left is an informal hedgerow. We'll be able to do more layering of that hedgerow in the months and years to come with the additional light levels as well. The plants will respond very well, and we intend to plant more through that ground cover with other seasonal plants in the months to come. We're thinking of transplanting some foxglove into there as well. There's already some bulbs, spring bulbs. We'll do more of that in the years to come as well. So a small corner, but at the entrance, transformational, just by taking out some semi-mature holly that are probably 40 years or so in age. If we could carry on, please, Nicole. You'll notice immediately that the edge of the path there is some of the timber that we have taken down elsewhere. We use that for edging the paths, use natural materials that we have. There's the deck that takes you into the pond, and just peering down to, my apologies, that was my phone, just peering down into the lawn there, you'll see some pear. Off to the screen, off to the left, is our native pear tree, Pinus communis. And it does produce fruit. They're like bullets. They're hard as anything. They don't get much larger than maybe 5 centimeters in height, a couple of centimeters in diameter. But rather nice to see the original native pear that originated in what would have been the Persian basin of past, gradually improved both in cultivars and geography, has brought towards Europe and Britain as a whole. Making our way onto the southern lawn here, you'll see a trunk with a lot of young growth coming away from it. That is an elm, and it used to be a pendulous elm right there immediately to your left and now in front of you. But we're keeping that. That growth will allow visitors to recognize the elm leaf structure, the stem structure. Very sadly, the Scottish elm, Ulmus glabra, is being killed off across Scotland now with Dutch elm disease, particularly in the northeast here. Very sad indeed, but nice to have an example for visitors at height level. It will never get to maturity anymore. In approximately 10 years' time, there'll be enough timber there for the beetle to return once again to lay its eggs for its young, and by doing that, the beetle is a vector. It will bring the disease back. But hopefully over a 15-year cycle, we can keep that plant going on each occasion. The rope and stakes behind, mid-ground there, background, that's the Labyrinth. That'll look stunning in March as the crocus grow through there once again. And as the video continues to play, you'll see that we're just panning across our Rowan collection, our Sorbus collection, and to the pond. That pond is clogging up badly with vegetation. A colleague in the team, Leslie, has well, she's chomping at the bit. She wants to be able to get in there and help clear out a lot of that material. I've said I'll join her. It actually is about 5 foot in depth in the center there, so it involves a team effort and harnesses and all sorts of other paraphernalia, but we will clear that out in due course. If we carry on, we'll spin back and in a moment, rather than looking due east, swing round to the west. All of the leaves you see on the lawn, the mass leaves there from an oak tree directly above and to the right, just behind the hedgerow. The Turkey oak, or sometimes known as the French oak, is a very fine tree, Quercus frenetto. But all of these leaves, doesn't matter whether they come from our shrub layer or our tree layer, they are all collected up. You'll see in a moment Richard on our ride-on mower using that machine to collect leaves on this occasion, not to cut the lawn. Those leaves go into our nursery area, get stored, and they rot down over 2 years. In their 3rd year, we use them, it's referred to as leaf mold at that point, as a wonderful friable medium, as the basis of our potting compost. We make our own, and not only does that allow us to control what's in our potting composts, but it saves us some money, and of course we're recycling the leaves in a very efficient manner. This is the remnants of our other pendulous elm, Ulmus glabra, Camperdownii. Very sadly, it died 3 years ago, but that wonderful pendulous form, contorted form, too good to have chopped down. We put guy wires through that, and you saw at the base there from the raised bed, wonderful raised bed built by volunteers, allows the climbers to gradually go up and through. We need to put in more guy wires. We will in due course, and I hope in the next 4, 5 years to have pendulous growth dangling off the tree once again, evoking what was once there when it was a living specimen. There's Richard, head gardener, on the ride-on mower collecting leaf material. A very important job right now, but a fairly thankless one. You can be hoovering up everything on a lawn and go back 20 minutes later, an hour later, and it appears as if you never touched the leaf litter. But bit by bit, day by day, over the next 4 weeks or so, maybe the next 6 weeks, we'll collect all of our autumn leaf cover once again. The path here has a granite dust surface to it. It binds in a solid manner, but allows good drainage of rain and moisture as well. We're looking here through to what's referred to as our beech lawn. There's some very fine trees through there, but you're beginning to see some autumn colour, and the hedgerow off to your far right is a yew hedge, and that takes us into the rose garden that we will look at briefly in a moment. I mentioned a moment ago that we have a fine French oak, or Turkey oak as it's sometimes known, well, just moving under the branch cover here of a English oak, native to Britain, just walking underneath that now. Again, a very fine plant in its own right. And you'll see in a moment the 4 more hedges off to the left will swing round. And for some of you, you might well be viewing the most recent incarnation of new Capitol build on the campus. This is the science teaching hub, this new white rectangle. It's on the far side of St. Maca Drive, but frames the rose garden particularly well. And you can just see beyond that, off to the right, the library as well. But this is the rose garden. It's the only formal display within the whole of the Botanic Garden. Rectangular beds, a lower section as well, dug down. Today that's our herbal in there, but historically roses were on the ground level as well. The rose garden was put in the early 1980s to tell the story of the cultivated rose, and we continue that narrative today. You can just make out a roof there in the far top right, a pair of chimneys there as well. That's the head gardener's house as we know it. That's the building that's on the map you saw at the beginning saying private home. Now rented out by the university, in fact specifically rented out by the Cruickshank Garden Trust, as I said, part of the original bequeathment. And interestingly enough, that property was where the young boys, when the Cruickshank building pre-donation to the university was a grammar school, and when those boys suffered from tuberculosis, that was the building they were sent to as the on-site hospital, if I can put it like that, for their recovery. So, as I said here, looking due south to the new science teaching hub, the rose garden in the foreground. We'll carry on, please, if we may. In a moment, we'll swing to the right, but before we do that, you'll see that we look off to our left. We have research beehives on site, and the academic team, both PhD students and those who are the formal academic staff for bee research, are improving in numbers all the time. Indeed, to match that or so, the number of beehives. The work being done is specifically looking at a mite that is known to be parasitic and very destructive to honeybee hives, particularly in a commercial context. The mite, its Latin name says it all really, is called Varroa destructor, and the research here is demonstrative and of national, international importance. It's not being done in isolation, but it's part of some very important global initiatives to help with honeybee commercial productivity. So much of our food is produced through pollinators, particularly honeybees, and so the work here is vital. It goes without saying to mention that the grains that we eat, cereals, pastas, are grasses, and they're wind pollinated, but so much else of our food is insect pollinated one way or another. The tree trunks you see in the foreground here, they are from those hollies that were cut down just before we went to the Labyrinth lawn a moment ago. They will be used in that corner there. We've had to dig out the bank, and we want to use those timber beams to provide support. We're walking down the main path now, that with the zoology building on our western flank immediately to the left. Brand new planting has gone in the ground there. That is by Latin naming, Davidia involucrata, an absolutely stunning tree that will, well, it'll look magnificent in about 60 years time, and it'll be very special in 120 years time. But it does have some beautiful common names. Perhaps one of the most evocative is the dove tree, because the individual flowers are not very dramatic, but as a tree, once it's reached flowering fruiting maturity, has evolved to produce what's known as a bract, and so those leaves there, when it comes to the flowering part of the plant, some of those leaves have evolved to be the same size as the leaves, but they are white, and they dangle around the main flower structure. And while visually that helps attracting pollinators, to us as humans from a distance, it looks very engaging, as if it's full of white doves sitting in the branches. It's also, another common name is the handkerchief tree, which I think is self-explanatory. There's a young plant. We've been growing it in the nursery, went into the ground, planted by the team a couple of days ago. Very satisfactory indeed. The tree you see directly behind that with the bare trunk, that's an ash tree that needs to come out. That will give space for the Davidia and other plantings in the future. That ash needs to come out because there was a huge elm next to it. The ash suffered with light levels and an overall shape and form, so it is a bit of a liability right now. But more than that, tragically, we've got a couple of ash along the western flank here. They will succumb to ash dieback. We have that disease in Aberdeen City now. It's only a matter of time before it comes into the gardens. It is already a transformational disease across much of Britain. Very sad indeed. So we continue along the path here, taking us, we're looking virtually due north now. Off to our right is the Sunken Garden. We'll have a quick look down through there. The Sunken Garden is not at its best at the moment, and that is very much on my shoulders. It reflects on the team, myself included, being on furlough last year due to COVID-19. We haven't had any volunteers in over 18 months, and we can't stay on top of everything. So we've corned off the majority of the Sunken Garden, but we will bring it back online, and I'm delighted to be able to say that we will have our first volunteers returning tomorrow week, the 10th of November. We've got some wonderful volunteers who have been patient, generously so, willing and wishing to return to the gardens. We now have a safe space for them to use, safe for them, indeed safe for my gardening team when undercover, and that allows them to be able to return. And so the Sunken Garden will be one area they'll work on. The lawn you see down there, that is the one bit of lawn that we do not consciously and consistently cut. It gets one formal cut per year. The reason for that is we don't want to create compaction. That is a bulb lawn. It's got species bulbs, wonderful spring bulbs, autumn bulbs as well. And so it gets cut late summer. After that, we leave it as you see it now. The shrubs behind there are predominantly rhododendrons, and a riot and knockout of colours from, some in February, March, and some flowering all the way through to May. A very fine display indeed. The ramp and railing there to the left takes you into the zoology building. In a moment we'll go through the wall there where there's an ornate gate. But we're looking down the path here, some students going towards tutorials, and the herbaceous border. This is a very fine display bed in its own right. As the video moves on, we'll be able to look down the full length of it from the northern side, the lawn side, and the herbaceous border is approximately 87 meters in length. It's 5 meters wide, so we're talking some 15 foot in width, 270 odd foot in length. It's very significant, very fine, double-sided as indicated here, being able to view it from both sides. And right now the autumn stem tissue is beginning to die back. Almost all of the flowers have since come and gone for this growing season, but we tend to keep the stem tissue in situ like that. It's very good for biodiversity. There's quite a few of the plants in seed producing food for other creatures, but generally February time. It depends on what other activities and what other weather is being offered to us as a team, but we cut that down come Feb, down to ankle level. Suddenly you're looking all the way down, and then come spring and through the summer, the whole seasonal growth of herbaceous starts all over again in certain species there, or certain cultivars there, grown to well over 2 meters in height. It's a very dynamic bed with pathways now, 2 pathways put through. You don't see them until you find them. It's a bit of a surprise, but it makes it more manageable as well. You're looking due east down the lawn. There's the patio there as well, and as we move through, you're looking at Dicksonias. The first metal tub there is not a Dicksonia, it's not a tree fern. It is a fern, not a tree fern. The other 2 tubs there are tree ferns. And so we move through the dividing wall here, ornate gate, and we enter the central lawn and pond garden. Now, historically, this was the rock garden. very fine in its own right. My predecessors had the enormous satisfaction in the late 1960s and early 1970s to build this section of the garden. A rock garden by Botanic default means that it A, has rocks in it, but B, is there to grow alpines. Alpines are flora of the wild that have evolved naturally to grow at high altitude or high latitude. Generally speaking, they are low growing, slow growing, very fine group of flora in their own right. And in a botanic collection, an ex situ collection, they need a lot of care and attention so that they don't get outcompeted by other plants around them. Sadly, in the context of this botanic garden, in the early 1980s, the workforce changed from 8 full-time gardeners to 4 and then reduced again. But in the early 80s, it meant my predecessors had to be able to decide which areas got maximum emphasis and which did not. Gradually, the rock garden here succumbed to less manpower, less gardening workforce, and today we've inherited a charming space, but dwarf conifers put in to remind originally the visitor they were moving just above the tree line, and now stately trees in their own right. And so we still have the rocks there, we don't have the alpines, hence the change in name, Central Lawn and Pond Garden, since my arrival. And we are adding to the flora all the time in here, but it's not an alpine collection, not anymore. We have recently put in a new pathway and a new vista point. I will show that off. I'm enormously pleased that that has occurred. As we swing around here, once again, we're gradually looking east, and the wall on the previous side, of course, was due solar south, got maximum solar gain. On this side, it's due it's the north aspect, so it's cooler, it's darker, it's damper, hence camellias against the wall there, rhododendrons. And over the last 3 years, volunteers put in a wonderful series of paths through here, timber edged, just as I had envisaged and asked. I'm delighted, and not least because the rhododendrons are now of a height where their stem tissue can be admired, and the pathways allow you to get into close proximity to these plants. A, to read the botanic labels, B, as I said, to touch them, see them. It's very fine, and we will weave our way along some of the pathwork here, looking both straight ahead and to our left to see some of the vista points as we go through. Fine rhododendron there with some very large leaves and fine underleaf colour. It's very evocative. It's wonderful as an adult. I think if you're a young child running through these pathways, it's even more enticing and exciting because the vegetation is going to feel so much taller above and around you. Looking through here into the pond system, all part of the original creation of this area in the late 60s, 70s, as mentioned. The wonderful red foliage there is a Japanese maple. It's very fine in colour in full summer, a darker red, but autumn colour is outstanding, as you can see there. We're coming into much brighter open conditions here. This is an area that we need to keep improving. The huge trunk is also an elm that we had to fell probably 5-6 years ago now. Again, it very sadly succumbed to Dutch elm disease. The trunk we've left on the deck, I still hope at some point we can find the cash to have it cut in half and turned into 2 huge bench sitting areas. But talking of sitting areas, there is a new bench behind that. It's not only a charming place to sit, it's secluded, it's very poignant, and it's based on the most wonderful phone call I received a couple of months ago out of the blue from a local citizen of Old Aberdeen asking if they could purchase a bench for the Botanic Garden in memory of one of their family. A very poignant phone call, and it was a delight to meet the individuals of the family, discuss and decide on a suitable location, and they then purchase the bench and put a plaque on it. You'll see it in a moment. It's lovely, very charming space. A few visitors already in the Central Lawn and Pond Garden enjoying what was yesterday's afternoon sunshine, and this is the secluded area. There's the new bench. It sits there very well indeed, and of course as the 4 seasons of the growing year come and go, so this area takes on an added, a variation in feel, but an added poignancy for those who so generously donated it. large trunk there is of the Pinus Radiator, its branches helping frame the patio on the far side of the wall. In a moment we will duck out of the pathway system here, come back up into the main lawn, and we'll walk underneath a very fine tree, fine in shape. It creates its own natural umbrella shape, but also has a beautiful leaf and a beautiful autumn colour. It is a cut leaf Norway maple. You'll see the yellow leaves on the deck in a moment, and we'll look up into the branches as well. The tri-stem plant off to your right as we move around there is a wonderful Chilean species of robal beech, Nothofagus obliqua. Here we are with the very fine cut leaf Norway maple, and we'll just carry on through as we enjoy this. I hope this little sequence gives you a feeling of a slight feel of what it might be like to stand underneath it. It was charming yesterday with the shadows and light filtering through, and the breeze as well. Well, we're now carrying on in a northwesterly direction up the central lawn area of the central lawn and pond garden here. Young plant there in yellow leaf. That'll be a very fine tree in the years to come. That is a tulip tree, east coast species, east coast of North America, Rhododendron tulipifera. There's only one other species in that genus globally, which is fascinating, and that's a Chinese tulip tree, not one we have in the collection, one that I very much hope we can source at some point. And so as we make our way up the lawn here, you will see a bench in a new location. In the foreground, what is lawn there now was a scree bed, all part of the original rock garden, since removed by the team. And this path, again, taking us gradually to the Arboretum, I knew with the natural lie of the rocks there, if we could turn it into a natural pathway, it would be stunning. My team have done a superb job, with the result that there are some natural sitting rocks there. In a moment you'll see this, that are flat. And this is a perfect location for a new bench. Again, added poignancy shortly. We've lifted an existing bench to put there for the time being, but colleagues in the zoology building wish to buy their own memorial bench to remember a colleague, and they will duly do so and place it there. We'll then put that bench back into the main collection. But as you sit there, so you look out on this view. It's a new stunning vista and opportunity for people to sit, reflect, and enjoy what is on offer. Looking due south here, tulip tree in the foreground, cut leaf Norway maple off to the left, and then you're looking through to the southern section of the garden as we've started this tour. It's very beautiful, brand new place, delighted and absolutely over the moon with the work my team have been able to carry out with the pathway, the materials used. I should add they're duly pleased as well, which is most satisfying. Look at that for a wonderful mid-autumn display of colour, light, shape and form. The pathway carries on here, and as Victor, who was one of the lead players creating this back bit of the path, said so proudly to me, "Mark, it goes to the left and it goes to the right." Indeed it does, and here we are looking down. Well, I thought we were going to look down to the right. That takes us to the nursery, but indeed it moves to the left, and through the dogleg here takes us into the Arboretum. The solid metal fence there. Here's the Arboretum gate taking us in, and immediately on our right we have again new light levels. The shrubs, the low-grown shrubs at the moment on the right are hawthorn, and we in the years to come intend to grow those on and layer them, layered hedge. But recently the team have taken out some rowans that were growing along their sorbus, all very badly and sadly diseased and dying, and for safety reasons needs to be removed, but still remains a bit of a conundrum to us as to how and why they did die. We think it's honey fungus, not fire blight. The reason for that is fire blight affects woody plants of rosaceae, of which hawthorn is part of that family. We know we've got fire blight elsewhere in the collection, which is very damaging and worrying, but on this occasion, why if it was fire blight, why it didn't impact the lower growing hawthorn, we don't know. So we suspect it's much more honey fungus. Honey fungus is a weak pathogen that can only impact plants that are already trees predominantly, that are already weakened. So new light levels along here. You'll see that as we make our way into the Arboretum. As you look through the gate, you might just be able to spy somebody in a red coat. In a moment, you'll see who that individual is in the context of who he is with, and I'll explain that as we go through the gate. So this takes us into the most northern section of the Botanic collection. It is the Arboretum, the term Arboretum referring to a location where trees are the predominant collection. And in the 60s, prior to purchase, this land was a market garden. And so no doubt my predecessors inherited land of well-cultivated soil, easy for planting, and really quite enriched. The trees have benefited from that. We are adding to the collection in here as we remove other trees for safety's sake, or again, sadly, because they've become diseased. We've removed a few elms in here. There's still at least one more to come out, as a case in point. So we are looking down the main slope here. We are looking northeast. Northeast. You can make out the double spires of St Maca on the far horizon. I would argue this is the best view on campus, and how very appropriate, because it is the spires of St Maca Cathedral, indeed the cathedral itself, that was the founding site of this university in 1495. The video is about to come to an end, but it will just swing round, and you will spy three colleagues. The chap on the far left with a flat cap is Jamie. He's a PhD student doing formal research in the Botanic Gardens, liaising with two of his academic colleagues, all three of them planning for a lesson that they will provide to other master students next week using the Arboretum. They are all from the geophysics department, and they'll be using instruments to be able to do ground sensor work. It is their second year of doing this, and I'm delighted they use the Botanics and the Arboretum in this context. Jamie in the flat cap there, his research in the Botanic Garden is fascinating, and he has various probes in stem tissue of trees, predominantly trees, looking at what moisture is taken up by them and matching that to what moisture is flowing into the soil from rainfall, matching one against the other. And ultimately his work will be used in an urban environment to try and use plants to reduce surface runoff and flooding in urban environments. So as ever, thank you very much for listening as we went through that video.
And thank you very much, Mark, for another fantastic walk through the garden. So we still have some time left for questions. If anyone would like to ask a question, you can just put your questions in the little chat box. So just again, that is the purple icon, and just hit on that in the bottom right of your screen, and then the little speech bubble will take you to the chat box. We do usually always have questions. I might just give people a bit of time for thinking of them. And Nicole's saying, can we bring you back next year for another series of topics, Mark? I mean, I think we will definitely be continuing our sort of events with Mark. We might can obviously change the format now that we've kind of done a walk in all 4 seasons. But I think Mark's going to be one of our regulars. I don't know if he can back out now.
Good. Ongoing pleasure. Of course. Yes, please is the answer. Yep.
Perfect. And Margot's saying, are the gardens now open to the public?
They are indeed. No doubt your question is in context of COVID. Blessedly they are. We reopened formally and officially this past April. And so, yes, we're back to 7 days a week. We're now into our winter hours. That's self-evident. We've just changed the clocks, and my goodness, the afternoons seem to be getting darker quickly, don't they? So 9 till 4:30, 7 days a week. Come the 1st of April of next year, we're back to our summer hours, 9 till 7, and that takes us through until the end of September. So yes, we are. Please come and enjoy.
Okay, and Nicole's saying, is the garden getting much busier now that the world is opening up again?
Yes, and it's very rare you get a single answer from me. That's as much with students and academic use as it is public use, and it's charming and lovely to see people returning. Yeah,
that's great. I'll just give give people another couple of minutes or so. Obviously, if there's no questions, we can kind of wrap things up. But we'll just hang on in case something springs to people's minds.
Well, if I may just interrupt, Chloe,
Yeah.
while possible further questions are coming in. What wasn't possible to show on today's video, because the uplift occurred 10 days ago, was one of the clan Light the North 2-meter tall lighthouse sculptures. As a university, we were lucky enough, fortunate enough, privileged enough to have 2 on campus, and one of them sat by the summer house in the Botanic Garden. Absolute treat to have it in situ for almost 2 months. And they got auctioned off last night to great acclaim and success. And from memory, hundreds of thousands of pounds were raised, and that's all going towards clan cancer research. So wonderful support from people of the Northeast, but the whole program as good as ever. I've been very fortunate through the delight of colleagues within the university to host 3 of those sculptures now over the last 9 years. We've had a dolphin, we've had an Orwellian now, we've had a lighthouse. So been a great treat, and to have that on the trail and help encourage people to come and visit the Botanics is an added bonus.
Great. I have just had a question come in. It's just popped into a different kind of chat, so I'm just checking it, from Margie, who's saying, are there any interesting fungi fruiting in the garden just now?
Depends what you call interesting. Yes, it's autumn, and we definitely have some fruiting bodies visible, some mushrooms, absolutely. I'm not convinced personally that they are interesting. A few of the fruiting bodies are suggestive that we may have a bit more honey fungus to deal with some of our plants, and that is a hallmark that maybe they are not as healthy and as vigorous as we would hope. I should add, though, that there is the interest in the context that's then a flag to us, a red flag potentially, and that we must maintain and monitor the health of those plants and boost their health if we can.
Thank you. And Nicole's saying, what is the next planting project on the agenda for the garden, or are there too many to cover?
Next project, was it, or next planting project?
Planting project.
Ah, nice specific question. So we have some more trees to go into our collection that we've been growing on behind the scenes in the nursery, and they are now getting to a size where they are ready to be planted out. That includes some ash, some Fraxinus. Now, I've mentioned on tour that we have ash dieback. We do, but not all species of ash are susceptible to ash dieback. So particularly those that are not susceptible, we have some in the collection. They will be going out. So looking forward to being able to augment and increase our tree collection in that context. Some of our beds need new ground cover and new understory shrub layer. We've got planting seams for that, and very much at the opposite end, not ready to put plants out, but to continue to perpetuate, as is part of the scene of managing and running a botanic garden. We collect seed and we share that with other botanic gardens around the world. This is a practice that's been running for centuries. It's the seed. One seed collection is known as the index seminum, and as such, my team order seed from other collections. We then grow those seeds on. So a lot of the winter work, autumn work, involves sowing some of that seed and then growing it on. So that's being done behind the scenes as well. There's never a dull moment.
And June was asking, is there any chance you'll be doing the in-person tours? And Nicole has said, all being well in 2022, we should be bringing back the in-person events, June. But Nicole and I obviously have been running our virtual events program, and Nicole does a fantastic job of running our events in Aberdeen. And we are hoping in 2022 that we kind of have a bit more of a hybrid, that's the kind of word for several things at the moment, a kind of hybrid events program where we continue to do online events, so we're able to connect with people who maybe aren't able to join us in person, but we're also able to bring people together for in-person events again too. And I'm sure the gardens will play, and Mark will play a prominent role in those events. So yes, watch the space for 2022, which is fastly approaching.
If I may just add to that, first off, yeah, wouldn't it be lovely to be able to offer formal tours to you? And as Chloe has mentioned, Nicole, other alumni colleagues will assist with that. Let's try and make that possible. The more the merrier, both in quantity and quality. Frequency. The other thing to say is that in 2 years' time, the garden is 125 years old. So I'm hoping we can have some events throughout the year. We had, for the first time in my curatorship, we had live theatre in the Botanic Garden this past September. We had live Shakespeare, which was great fun. If we can perpetuate that next year and then augment it the following year thereafter, I'd be delighted. And you'll forgive me, if any of you are friends of the Botanic Garden, you will know that a calendar is due to be available. I've been delayed on it, but we are getting the pricing sorted and everything else, and making it available online. You can come in and purchase it in real time, but it will be available online through the university shop imminently. So do watch for that. It'll be on the university shop online. It's selling this year for £9, price set by the Friends, because much of that money after cost or printing goes back to the Friends of the Botanic Garden. So if you want to see a few images of the past year, they'll be in the calendar to allow you to know what date and day of each month is for this coming year. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you. I think if there's no more questions, we can kind of just nicely wrap things up there. Thank you once again so much, Mark. Thanks for recording everything, and thanks for taking us through. It's always really interesting to hear what's happening in the gardens, and it's been lovely going through every season as well. So thanks so much, and thanks to everyone for joining us, especially those. I think some people have attended all 4 of them as well, which is really cool. So thanks to all of you guys too, and I hope you enjoy the kind of rest of your days and your afternoons and maybe your evenings, depending on where you are. So thanks very much.
And Chloe, to you, Nicole, thank you so much. I can't do this without you. I can't do it today, and I certainly wouldn't have been able to do it over the past year. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Yes, thanks again, everyone. Bye.